Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair. This week is Bryan Martin, Basset royalty. Haven't seen Bryan for a couple years, so I was really looking forward to this interview, and I'm sure you'll have a great time listening to Bryan. So sit back and relax and listen to Bryan for an hour or so. I think it's a bit more. Hi, everybody. Will Alexander here, and today on the interview chair we have Bryan Martin. Hey, Bry, how's it going?
Hey, everything's great in the PNW.
Excellent. I love the beard mustache. I love that look. That looks fabulous.
Yeah, it's looking good. I had one of these in college. I grew a handlebar mustache in college, and then as I grew up, I realized that's probably why I didn't get any dates in college. I had it all waxed up and twisted up, but
Who does that guy think he is? Well,
yeah,
that was
right.
more age appropriate, so it's better now.
Nancy likes it. If Mama's not happy, no one's happy. So
There you
Nancy likes it.
go. How was Nancy?
She's good.
Good, good.
She's just working her butt off on her pet pet food bank.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. She feeds over 5,000 pounds a month on just her warehouse day. Hands out that much food.
I had
It's
no
it's
idea. Oh,
it's amazing. Yeah, it's a great thing to talk to her about. She's very passionate about it.
yeah, I'm going to most definitely when I get my.
Yeah,
We'll get her on that chair. I'm going to ask her all about that. I'll have to make a note about that.
yeah, yeah. That's her passion now is her Fido pet food bank.
Oh wow. Okay. Excellent. That's amazing. Good for her.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. Let's jump into it. Tell me how you got involved in the sport of dogs, and tell me how old you were.
Well, I was probably 6 or 7. My mother always wanted a basset hound. And in those days, now that's like 1960, my father said, well, if you can save money out of the weekly budget for food, he gave her, I don't know how much she had a week to buy groceries. And if she could save $1 or $2, she put it in a jar. She got $75 and she said, we're going to get a basset hound now. So they found a pet shop that had basset hounds for sale, and she bought a basset hound. Sweet Violet Begonia Martin was her name. That was her registered name. And as she grew up, my father decided that we needed to have some puppies. And he had the insight enough to say, if you're going to have puppies, we have to have quality puppies. We're not just going to have just breed dogs. We're just going to have a nice litter. So he sought out the top stud dog in the Chicago area. And I tell you, my recollections of this bitch, why it ever got bred in the first place, was beyond me, but maybe she needed some money. I don't know. But so they bred the litter, and then she said, well, bring the puppies to the local specialty club. We have a fall fun day every year, and bring the kids and the puppies and whatever, and enjoy basset hounds for the afternoon. So we did that, and of course we got third out of 3 in every class, and we showed 3 puppies, I guess, and we got it. It did not go well as far as quality. But another big breeder in the area came up to my father and said, it looks like you guys are enjoying this. The kids are having a good time here, and I've got some stock that you might be interested in. Come out to my kennel, visit my kennel, and whatnot. So my father did, and she said, it's best just get rid of everything that you've got. You don't need any of this. He sold everything. He bought a bitch, and she gave him a bitch to like a partner, because this bitch wasn't the best temperament. She had half a tail most of the time. But my father did well, and he got to needing the last major, and I was 10 years old, and we go to the Rock River Valley Kennel Club in Pecatonica, Illinois. There was an old guy, J.J. Duncan from Atlanta. I remember this like it was yesterday.
Wow.
I won my first major with the filler bitch. And my father, who was expecting to finish his bitch that day with the Major Co's reserve. It was a bench show. It was the longest day of my life. Because my father was stuck at the dog show, and he was furious, just furious. I mean, he got over it. He finished his bitch. The bitch that I showed, the filler bitch, never won another point in her life. But she did produce our first champion. And we had a handler, Dougie McLean, an old terrier guy.
I don't know him. I've heard of him. Yeah.
The Weasel, they called him. His wife was the sister to Cliffy Hallmark's wife.
Yes, I know that story. Okay. Yep.
So, and his big client was Harold Florsheim of Florsheim Shoes. Showed Airedales for Mr. Florsheim, amongst other things. He showed all terriers, but and hounds, and he showed our Basset, and I traveled with him and got to know about dog shows with him.
How old were you when you started traveling with him?
Oh, 13, 14.
Okay.
And then so we did that, and then I started to work for Jack Funk in the mid 60s. This was about 67. Got paid $1 an hour.
All right.
To work for Jack Funk, Flaming Beauty Irish Setters.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I traveled with
Jack.
Jack.
Irish Setters, Jack.
Yeah. So I would ride my bicycle to Jack's place, 3 miles there, 3 miles back. And we lived in a great area because southeast of our house, 3 miles, was Jack Funk. 3 miles to the west was Larry Downey. 3 miles to the north was Dougie McLean.
Wow.
So I had great, and Denny Codner was in that group, and Dick Cooper, and, they were a little further out, but we had great education by just following these guys. It was just amazing. And my father would not allow me to get paid to work at the dog shows. It was an education.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And Jack Funk tried to pay me $10 one day at the show for working the whole day. $10. My father said, nope, give it back. You're learning. You're there for an education.
But you were allowed to get paid when you were working at the kennel.
Yes. Yeah. $1 an hour. And there were times I'd work 12, 14 hours. We trimmed goats for the county fair. He was into goats with Norman Austin.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, Norman showed goats. And that's where he met Jean Austin, was at the goat shows. Wow. She wasn't into dogs. She was into the goats, and she was a goat judge. And so he was partners with Norman, and we'd have to clipper the goddamn goats for the county fair. Well, we're out there at 11 o'clock at night. It's 90 degrees. It's humid. And those itty bitty goat hairs itch like a son of a bitch. I tell you, when it sticks to you in that humid weather. But $1 an hour, I learned how to clipper goats.
There's a skill, right? It has to be
Yeah.
a skill.
So we were big in junior showmanship. My family was. I qualified 5 years for the garden. Between my brother, who's 3 years younger, and my sister, who's 9 years younger, we qualified for 14 consecutive years into junior finals at the garden.
Wow, that's excellent.
I got 1/3. My sister placed twice. My brother never placed. But growing up with Basset Hounds, that was our breed. And I guess in a lot of ways, I got lucky. My brother was always the prince, and he got to show the specials dogs, the champions. And I always had to show the class dogs. But by showing the class dogs, you truly learned that no two dogs can be shown exactly the same. You have to work with them and adjust them. And I've always said showing Basset Hounds is like showing a bag of sand. You get the front end up and the back end goes down. You get the back end up, the front end goes down. If you get both ends up, the middle goes down. So it's just like shifting sand, and it's all a balancing act. It's a shifting and balancing act. And when I won my first major, my father kind of realized that maybe this kid's got a talent for this. So I got to show all the class dogs and win all the points and do that. And I didn't care about going into groups or anything. I just liked showing my class stuff.
Sure.
So that's how I really got into doing the breed as well as I did, because I had more opportunities, you know.
I still remember that. Was it a picture or a T-shirt? The Michael Jordan of Basset Hounds. I forget. I remember seeing that caricature.
Oh, I got it right here on my wall. I want to be like Bry.
Yeah.
I'll show it to you.
I remember that. I remember seeing that in the Tar Heel, I think.
See?
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. It's one of the McCartneys that was done in '97.
Well.
Yeah, it's a great
That's amazing
picture. I want to be like Bry. That's when we had a guy come over from Spain, and he said that I was the Michael Jordan of Basset Hounds. So I had this picture. He went to Louisville with us, and I had this done by McCartney at the Louisville show in '97.
Well, maybe I saw it at Louisville then. I don't remember. I remember you showing it to me somewhere.
Yeah, it's a great pick. It's a great pick. But I went to college. My brother continued to show. My father found a dog on the cherry blossom circuit that he wanted to buy. He finished it. Gave it best to winners. Bobby Barlow was showing it.
Okay.
And he wrote the owner. And about 6 months later, the owner died, and the executors of the estate were going through his files and found the letter from my father and offered the dog to us. We bought him for $1,500, my brother and I, a dog, Tallyho's Top Banana.
Oh, I've heard of that dog.
And my brother won 2 nationals with him. He won the group at Santa Barbara, 1,000 Hounds at Santa Barbara. He did real well. But Bobby Barlow was my real mentor in handling the breed. He was and probably the greatest. He held the record for best in shows. He showed a dog for Mrs. Robeson, Slippery Hill Hudson. And he won the Quaker Oats Award. I don't know, when he did it, and with 29 group firsts,
Wow.
that won the Quaker Oats Award at that point, and it's now since changed names over
Hundreds,
the
yeah.
years.
Crazy, yeah.
But the last, no, I won that award 5 times. The most I won in one year was 117 groups in one year.
It's a lot of
To
groups, right?
think that Hudson could do it, win it at 29 groups, and then I had to win it with
Yeah.
17. It was how the business has evolved.
Well, exactly. There's just so much more shows, and
You know, if you don't win close to 100 groups now, you can't win that award.
no, no.
But I'm sure it'll go down these years with all this COVID shit. But so anyway, my brother showed Top Banana, and I went to college. And I got out of college, and I couldn't find a job. I got a degree in advertising and public relations, journalism degree, and it was one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of things. Well, what's your experience? Well, I don't have any experience. Well, come back when you get some experience. Well, how do you get experience?
Yeah.
You know, well, you got to. So I decided I was just going to do some freelance writing, maybe get a bartending job, and I found an ad in the paper for a horse show manager. It says hire judges, order ribbons and trophies, run the shows. It was a local employment agency in my town, so I got my little interview suit, got my portfolio put together, and I go in with the paper under my arm, and I go in and I say, I want to apply for the horse show manager position, or horse show secretary. It was horse show secretary. And it was a guy, and he took a step back, and he eyeballed me up and down, and he said, horse show secretary? At that point, I knew I could control that interview, because I knew that he did not know what he was even interviewing for.
Mhm.
He saw secretary, and he was sending 9 to 5 skirts to the, women secretaries. A lot of women, oh, I love horses. Yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't that kind of job. A horse show secretary is like a horse show superintendent.
Right. Dog show.
So I go and interview. It's 5 miles from my house, biggest stable in the Chicago area, Blue Ribbon. They had all the Chicago International horse shows when the amphitheater closed down in the city. Chicago Amphitheater, where the International Dog Show was. They had the International Horse Shows. They had quarter horses, Arabs, hunters and jumpers. They had all that down there at the amphitheater. Well, when they closed down the amphitheater, the horse shows went somewhere. They went out to the stable. I got the job to manage horse shows there. I had never been to a horse show in my life, but I could bullshit my way into it. And so I did that for about 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Till about 80, mid 80s. Nancy and I got married in 83, and I still ran horse shows. And it got to a point where she was getting picked on a lot by the locals, local handlers. And so I kind of pulled away from my horse show and started showing dogs with her. I knew how to show dogs.
Sure.
When we were dating, I sent her a basset hound. A funny thing, I go out to Long Island to see her, show the dog. She had it for about a month or so, and first day she gets 3rd out of 3, and I couldn't understand how she got 3rd out of 3, but she did. So the next day she says, I can't show your dog. You're going to have to show your own dog today. And I said, oh, okay. I win the breed from the classes with it.
Of course you
Ooh,
do.
ooh. Gerda Kennedy. I love Gerda Kennedy with her little red shoes. Nancy was furious. She was, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? These hands can make a basset
like
hound.
Mike.
So that's basically my background in growing up in dog shows. It was just doing that. So
Oh, in the 80s when you and Nance got together showing dogs, carry on. I want to hear the stories. I want the dogs. I want everything, Bri.
Oh, well, I mean, we had some great clients. We showed for Chubby Checkers. Showed a Harlequin Great Dane for Chubby Checker. Finished that for him. Lily Marlene was her name. The son of the owner of Arlington Racetrack, Bruce Duchessois, his father owned the racetrack, and he was a big ammunitions. He built railroad cars to haul ammunitions. Made millions doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Own the racetrack, Arlington Park Racetrack, the Arlington Million. We showed Labradors for his son, Bruce. But I mean, showed for Gilbert Kahn. That was he was probably the most generous client, easiest client to ever work for. He understood the business and he was very generous. He called me up when I had to send Gatsby home, and he had won 12 best in shows by that time, and I had to send him home because the owners had run out of money. They just said, we can't afford it anymore. And Nancy was friends with Gilbert's partner, Barbara Finanger, through the chins, Japanese chins. And we were showing a chin, which was the first best in show winning bitch in the history of the breed. We showed for Dr. Arthur, who was one of the first doctors. He was a dermatologist that worked with AIDS patients when AIDS was starting to build up. So he had a great practice. He loved chins, and him and Mark Burkell had a chin, Carrie Me, who was from the same kennel that Gilbert had a dog from. And Gilbert, George, his partner, was dying. He was ill or something, and Nancy said to Gilbert, you know what, I can put my bitch away for 6 or 8 months, and you and George can enjoy your dog and be number one chin. And he said, well, thank you very much at the time. Mm-hmm. And then much years later, he called me and he said, I hear you're in trouble. I said, well, what did I do this week? He said, no, I hear you have to send your basset hound home. And I said, yeah, they can't swing it anymore. He said, well, I'll pick him up. I'll take the rest. This was in 1st of May. He said, I want to help you guys out. I said, seriously? This is a basset hound. You have chins and Shih Tzus and Cavaliers. And he said, yeah, Nancy was very good to me years ago, and this is my way of paying back.
Wow, isn't that something?
And I mean, one day I was talking to him and I said, Gil, I got to ask you, you know, what do you want out of this? He says, the only thing I want is a phone call every night you show the dog. You let me know that you're healthy, the dog's healthy, who you beat or who beat you. I don't want to hear any crying. I don't want to hear any whining. I don't want to hear any excuses. I just want the facts. He said, probably 50% of the time, wherever I am in the world, if I don't pick up the phone, I'll get a message within 30 minutes. And I'll know exactly what you did within 30 minutes of any phone call you make to me. Wherever I am in the world, I'll get that message within 30 minutes. I'm thinking, whoa, this is big time. So I said, well, like, you don't want tear sheets, do you? He said, why would I want tear sheets? Well, because I give tear sheets to every one of my clients. When I show their dog, they get a copy of the tear sheets. But you don't want any trophies, do you? He said, no. He said, you keep everything that you want, and then you can give the rest to the owners. I won 5 televisions that year. It was a big year for televisions, for best in shows. I had one in the trim room, one in the bathroom, one in the kitchen. Yeah. And that and pedigree chairs. I won more chairs, and the Kintners that bred the Gatsby and owned them, they wanted every chair. They had a dozen, 15 chairs. But he said, no, I don't want anything. I said, just give me a phone call. So one night I called him. I said, we went best in show tonight. Where are you? I said, well, I'm in Montana. And there was a dog show today? It was like on a Tuesday. I said, yeah. We went best in show. Oh, hey, that's great. Well, from the time he took ownership of the dog to the end of the year, in 8 months' time, we won 40 best in shows to add to his 12. So he shattered Hudson's record that Bobby had. The show that I broke the record, I got number 30, was in Lexington, Kentucky, in their fall shows, Labor Day, and Bobby was there. And one of the greatest comments I ever received from anybody was, congratulations. If anybody could have done it, I'm so proud that you did it because you came up the right way. And I said, Bobby, I've always given you credit for teaching me how to show this breed. He said, well, you're doing it better than I am now, so congratulations. And he died shortly after that, I think. But that was really neat to have my real mentor congratulate me on breaking his record.
That is something.
A breed.
Tell me more about Bobby. Let's delve into Bobby a bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Tell me when you first met him and just how it went from there. I was a big fan of Bobby's growing up, so.
I used to sit and just watch him. And I'd ask him questions, or I'd do this or that. I never, he was in Pennsylvania and I was in Chicago. He never came out my way, but anytime I would go there or go to the Nationals or whatever, I'd always sit and watch him. He had great hands. He had great hands with the dog. He was so molding, I found, with so many of his dogs that he showed. He was just an amazing guy. I was really thrilled to have learned from him.
Well, I first met Bobby, it was in Canada, actually, at the Sportsman Show.
Oh, yeah.
He used to go up to the Sportsman Show not every year, but a couple times he came up.
Dougie McLean would always talk about going to the Sportsman Show. He loved doing that.
They were a fun set of shows.
Yeah.
I was a kid, and it was a bench show. It was our only bench show back then. and I got to meet everybody. Like everybody was there. Bill Trainer, George was always there. George Ward,
Right.
um, Bobby was there. Tom
Yeah.
was there.
George was a great influence on me too. I he would talk to me. We'd talk for hours at a show, sit down and talk. And I remember the first time we had just gotten married and we went to Louisville in March, and it was before Louisville was such a pain in the ass to get into.
Yeah.
That we used to call it the California Gold Rush. They'd open those doors and everyone would race in to get a spot. And before they got into their reserve grooming and everything, this was you'd get there 10 o'clock in the morning the day before the show and just walk in and there'd be plenty of space and da da da. So of course, George was there. He's always the first one there, and everybody knows he's always the first one there in the morning taking attendance, and giving you razzles if you were 15 minutes late.
Oh, I know.
Don't come in with a coffee and say, "Well, I had to stop at Starbucks." No, that didn't set with George. You get there at 6 o'clock, so he's all set up and he's got electrical cords going everywhere. And we set up about 20 feet away from him or something. And Nancy goes over to George and says, can we tap into one of your electric cords or can you give up one of your cords? And he looked at her and he said, no. He said, you get here on time and you can get an electric.
Oh, Jesus.
She comes back, she's spitting nails. That son of a bitch, who does he think he is? I said, I'm going to tell you who he knows who he is. I said, we don't F with George. I said, trust me, I'll take care of it. I'll talk to George. So about an hour later, I go over to George and say, hey, George, how you doing? Hey, good to see you. How's married life? I said, well, it's going okay until about an hour ago. Thank you very much. I said, anyway, we can work something out with some of these electrical cords. He said, sure, no problem. He said, just go unplug one of them. You can have one of those outlets over there. I said, thank you. And, went back. I said to Nancy, it's all been taken care of. How'd you get that done? How'd you do that? How'd you talk to that son of a bitch? He's terrible. I said, I told you I'd take care of it. There are certain ways to do certain things. Well, shortly thereafter, she and Roz got to be very close. And Roz gave us our names, Basset Boy and Chin Lady. She gave us for Christmas, she had these little state license plate key rings and she had them engraved or laminated or whatever, Basset Boy and Chin Lady on Illinois license plates for our keychain. And that's how we got our names, was from Roz and George.
Wow. I remember those days. You could not show up late. It was always good afternoon, Mr. Alexander, if you were 2 minutes late, right?
Yeah. And he knew it. It was amazing. But we had really great clients. Mrs. Orlandi was she was tops. Her husband. I remember I'd just come off of Gatsby's wins, and it'd been about a year, and Bumper Cars was a 9 to 12 puppy dog, and he won everything at the National. He won the supported show. He won the sweepstakes. He won at the supported show. He won sweepstakes and the futurity at the National. He wins his class. There were 20 in each class. All the days he wins his classes, and he didn't need to go winners at the National. I did go winner's dog. Nancy went winner's dog that year, but showed the dog for winners. But he says, we're going to go after Gatsby's record. And I said, no. I said, I don't know if my knees can take it. That's 52 best in shows. He said, no, we'll go after it. He said, trust me, we'll take care of you. Okay. So ultimately, he didn't beat Gatsby's best in show record. He came 7 short. Gatsby had 179 groups. Bumper Cars had 250 group firsts.
Wow.
And but Claudia and Dom they were great. Gave me motorhomes. I went through three motorhomes during the time I worked for Claudia. All the dogs. We won 4 top hound awards at the New York dinner. Number 1 Basset for 11 years or something straight. And she was great. She never questioned me as to where I wanted to go or where I thought I should go. When I told her I didn't want to go somewhere and she wanted it done, she said, well, you can't win if you don't play. And if you play and you don't win, there's another day.
Exactly.
There was one show I did not want to go to, a specialty show, and she said, I want you to show the dog there. And I won the specialty show. We're taking the picture, and the judge says, I didn't think you'd ever show this dog to me. So, it works out. You don't, I learned then that you just don't second guess it. If you just do what the client wants. And fortunately, I had one client that said to me, I want you to show my dog at such and such specialty show. It was a class dog. And I said, no, I don't want to. No, I'm not. I told the judge, I'm not, it's going to be a long time before I show to him. He had beaten the specials dog that Nancy came with when we got married. And the dog lost the pedigree award by 3 points. And it came down to that breed.
Wow.
And I said, he said it was like his first assignment. He gave me winner's dog and he started passing things around. And he came to me, he said, well, how'd you think I did? I said, you got chicken. You didn't do the right thing for the breed. Well, I can't give you everything. And I said, I'm not asking for everything. I'm just asking for you to judge right.
Yeah, you're the right.
And if you're not going to judge right, I said, it's going to be a long time before I show to you again. I'm just going to let you get your sea legs and see how you judge and whatnot. So I showed him at this specialty show. He gives me best of winners. And he says, we're taking a picture and there's all sorts of people around us. He says, who is this dog, Bryan? He's handsome. My God, he was an easy winner. Where'd you get this dog? Who's this dog? And I said, I don't want to talk about it right now. There's too many people around here. I said, you read your catalog and then we'll talk. Well, he's just fabulous. So later in the day, I'm marking my catalog at the superintendent's office, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this raging bull come at me. Smoke's coming out of every orifice. He is furious. How can you show that dog to me? I said, what do you mean, how can I show that dog? Well, he's sired by one of my dogs. I said, yeah. I said, you sold that dog, what, 5 years ago? He says, well, yeah. I said, did you know that this breeding was done? Why would I know that? I said, well, if you're so interested in it, you'd have some connection with the dog that you sold, but you don't have any connection. He made a nice dog. He made something that you liked. What are you upset about? Well, you told me you weren't going to show to me for a long time. I said, 5 years isn't enough.
We can make
I
it
can
longer.
make it 10. I can make it 10 if you want. Oh, no, 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 no. I like it when you bring me nice dogs and they're always trained and they're trimmed and their nails are done and they look the part. And he says, you make it easy for me to judge. Okay, so what's the problem? So years go by and I show him some more dogs, and then somebody else was judging out east, and another handler had another Basset, and he says, Mike, the judge says to me, I saw this handler, he came by the ring, but then he didn't come in the ring, didn't show his dog to me, and I couldn't understand why. So I asked him later, now this is the same guy talking to me. I asked this handler, why didn't you show to me? He said, well, because you always put Bryan up.
Oh, jeez.
And why should I show to you? Because you're probably just going to beat me because you're thinking of what's going to happen if you put me up, and what's Bryan going to say? I said, now I know I don't want to show dogs to you. So 10 years later, I showed a dog to him, gives me third in the group, and he said, Bryan, this dog's shoulders are they're exactly what the breed needs. They're beautiful front. This is a gorgeous dog. I said, yeah, thank you. It was the Beethoven dog. And so I showed him, I think it was Beethoven. And then I showed him to him at a specialty show, gives me best opposite sex to a bitch that had half the front that my dog did. Put him back on the ramp, going over the shoulders, and then he puts this other bitch up. I said, never. And I never showed another dog. But that's the good thing that, you don't have to make a big thing about it. You just don't show to people. That's the nice thing about dog shows. You don't have to show every dog show.
That's right. And on the other hand, then judges don't have to comment all the time too. If he kept his mouth shut, you probably, who knows, right?
Yeah. But anyway, so that's kind of my things on that. But I've had I showed Great Pyrenees. I won the national in the Pyrenees. I won the Polish Lowland Sheepdog National. We had great runs. Our German clients that are still around, Andrew Green shows for them, Danny Goodland shows for them. We showed their very first dogs in the States here. He owned a pump manufacturing company. Wolfgang Stamp was his name, and Barbara Bruns. But Wolfgang owned with his cousin a pump manufacturing plant, and they were the only stainless steel pump manufacturers in the world. And they made pumps from little medical supply pumps to pumps that were the size of your house.
Yeah.
And he came to the United States and he built a new factory in Madison, Wisconsin. Well, that was only 2 hours from our house. So she asked some of the Samoyed ladies, friends that they had, who should she get to show her Samoyeds? And they said, well, there's only one person. You get Nancy to show your Samoyeds and you'll be in like Flynn. And so she called us and we started showing for her. Nancy won the national for her and several best in shows um, but she then we started showing the Polish lowland sheepdogs for her.
Oh,
Won 5 best in shows on Polish lowland sheepdogs for Barbara and Wolfgang. There's only been 8 best in show awards given in the history of the breed in the United States, and Nancy's won 5 of them.
Wow.
You know, but the chin clients we showed for Marippy and Jennifer, their little chin made him the best top winning chin dog in the history of the breed with 13 bests. Showed the other chin bitch, Mimi, for James Dalton, French Bulldogs and Afghan Hounds. He owned her. She won 18 best in shows. A chin bitch.
I know. I remember her.
Best, 18 best in shows. Yeah. Nancy won the first best in show on a chin bitch. They just don't win. She won with that. So
yeah, well, she proved them wrong, didn't she?
Yeah. Spinonis, she won 5 best in shows on Spinonis. No one's won more than 1. Or no, I think one's 1, 2, or 3, but she holds that record. You know, just we've met such wonderful people across the world. I had Basset Hounds shipped to me from Japan to finish here. They just wanted an American championship. That meant a lot to them.
Sure.
Japan. And it wasn't cheap for them to ship those dogs, and $1,500 to ship a dog from Japan at the time was. I'm thinking I don't need a championship that bad. But the Japanese have been good to us, and the Germans, and we had a great life. It just got to a point where we just got tired.
Oh, for sure. Now, what year did you guys stop? Was that when you started AKC? Is that when you stopped?
Yeah, 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I applied. I had applied for the job 6 months earlier for the Chicago job that they ended up giving to Mike Szabo. And I was kind of pissed off about that, but I thought, well, maybe it's not good to work in my home area anyway. So when this position came up in the Pacific Northwest here, Nancy had family out here, so it made it easier to move out here. And I knew a lot of people out here. They knew of me. It fit very well.
Yeah.
So.
And now you're judging the Hound Group.
Now I'm judging the Hound Group.
Tell me about you were good about just going on and on, so I missed a few things I wanted to ask you. What about dogs that?
Question 5 or 6?
I'll have to ask Bob. Was there any dogs out there that you wished you could have been a part of, or that made a stamp in your head that you've never forgotten about, other than the ones you showed?
Yeah. Biggest one, I remember I was on the Tar Heel circuit. I just had one dog. I think I had Gatsby down there. And I went to go watch Dobermans. Nancy's initial breed, Dobermans and Pointers she had. So I'm sitting there and the open red dog class comes in and I fall off my chair. Perry Phillips has a red dog that is fucking to die for. I could not believe it. So I called Nancy that night and I had my catalog and I said, hey, I found this Doberman that I just think is the bee's knees. He's just incredible. Oh, well, what's its breeding? And I read off the breeding. Oh, yeah, I know that one. I know that lady. Yeah, she's had nice dogs. Well, what's its name? I said, I don't know, this is Brunswick's kryptonite. She said, oh, okay, well, we'll have to watch for that. We'll have to watch for that dog. Okay.
We all watched that dog.
About, it must have been a year and a half later. We're in Lansing, Michigan. There are Christmas shows, and Lansing was always a bitch because it was in the Civic Center in downtown Lansing, and you had to go down a ramp to get to the dog show for the grooming area. You showed upstairs and you groomed downstairs. And you usually slid down the ramp because snowy and icy or wet or whatever. And you unload on the street, and then you got to wheel your stuff down the sidewalk, down the ramp. So we're unloading, and George Murray's now got the dog. And he starts walking down the sidewalk. I said, Nancy, there's the dog. That's the dog. That's kryptonite. That's him. And he comes up and he says, hey, Nance. And she hated to be called Nance.
I'll remember that.
Hated it. Doesn't like Nance. So he says, hey, Nance, check out my new dog here. What do you think? And he's standing out there and baiting her, and he parks himself, and he's looking fabulous. And she says, the only thing she says to George is, you check his thyroid yet, George? And he says, thyroid? What are you talking about? I said, your dog's thyroid deficient. Well, how do you know? Well, he's got those two patches on his flanks there and his loin that are different color. She said, Doberman's, that's thyroid deficient. You got to get him on some thyroid medication, get that coat looking good, and get him feeling good. Oh, okay. 3 months later, he brings the dog back. He says, so, Nance. I'm going, what do you think now? And he says, I put him on thyroid. He looks a lot better now, doesn't she? Doesn't he? And Nancy said he sure does. She never complimented him because she just didn't. She doesn't come up with many compliments, but that was the one dog that just, I found him, stuck with him. He was just an incredible dog.
Yeah.
I really, I got to show my peer, be in many groups. I beat him one time. Emmett Wiseman was doing the working group. We were in South Bend, Indiana, and my dog he hated noises. He was noise sensitive. And every morning I showed him, I had to walk him around the dog show. If it was outdoors, I had to rattle the tents up. I had to take him by the hanging plants. I had to do the ring gates, so he wouldn't freak out. Well, there was an exhaust fan in the upper apex of the building, and it was kind of rusty, rattling, da 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 da. And my dog is like freaking out. And it's my turn for examination. I got down on my knees and I lifted the dog up this 120 pound, 110 pound Pyrenees. Because I had big forearms cranking those basset hounds. I lifted the dog off the ground about 2 inches so he couldn't back out or do anything. I just held him up. Emmett did the exam with me holding the dog up, and then I win the group. Kryptonite was second. He was furious. But, I didn't relish beating the dog. Everybody likes to beat the top winner, but, there are times and places, and I know you should never have won,
Yep. That's
And I think that's what got to me when I got out of college. I would win things when I shouldn't win, and I'd lose things when I shouldn't have lost. And I got very disengaged from dog shows. I just didn't like it because it was sticky like that.
But hopefully it balances out when those two things happen.
Yeah, it always does. But when you're 20 years old, you don't think about that.
No, exactly. You know? What advice would you give a young handler now, Brian? Nance. I can call you Bry. I've always called you Bry.
Yeah, that's fine. I want to be like Bry.
Exactly.
The biggest thing is to read your standards and be able to interpret them to the nth degree, to be honest with what you have on your lead and read that standard. And if you don't understand it, find a mentor to explain something to you.
Yeah.
But if you don't know your standard, then you don't really know what you have. And there'd be times where I'd say, boy, if this dog was half again as good as he thinks he is, we'd win twice as much.
Right.
You know, you have dogs that they just think they're stars.
Okay.
They're show dogs.
Yeah.
Doesn't make them a good quality dog.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's being able to read your standard and then sell your dog. You got 2 minutes to sell your dog. You too, Mr. Judge, you're going to buy my dog today. Forget about those over there. You're buying mine. So whatever I had to do to get your attention, you know, head, shoulder, whatever, but know your standard. And I don't think there aren't enough adults, let alone young handlers coming out of the junior ranks, that do enough of their studying.
Right.
And that bothers me. It's always bothered me.
I've come across that a lot myself because I teach a lot of seminars and whatnot, and I get a lot of youngsters, and because their dog stands up four square and stands for, they think they should win. Well, doesn't make it a good dog. You have to know what you're showing. You know, like
I had an incident. There was a guy down in, I like to tell this story. We're at the Town and Country Kennel Club in Oklahoma. And I'm showing the Master Sergeant Cox from Texas. And he had the flat top military cut. He was a hoot. And I'm showing Pyrenees. There's 2 Pyrenees. And I'm the second one in class, and mine has 2 drop teeth in the front. And he opens the dog's mouth and he goes, "Oh, I don't like to see that. That's not right. You can't have that." And at that point, I thought, he opened the door. I'm running through it. So I said, well, it's perfectly acceptable in the standard. It's written in the standard that 2 drop teeth are expected. He goes, "Time out!" In the middle of the ring. "Time out!" And he goes over to his table and he sits down, he gets his briefcase out, and see him going through all his papers, all his standards, and he comes up with the Pyrenees standard and he says, "I don't read anything in this standard about that." I said, "And what's the date on the standard?" "Well, 1937. I said, "The standard's been changed since then." "Time out!" He calls for the field rep, which was Janice Lugan's land. It was one of her first assignments. And I see across the hall, she's standing by a door. They call field rep to ring 6, and she ducks out the door. And I don't see her for 3 hours. She doesn't come to the ring at all. I said, get the book of standards from the superintendent. They bring the standards over and open it up. They said, that's the wrong standard too. In the meantime, Nancy went back to the truck and got the standard. Now, the Kennel Club used to provide standards. They call them pocket standards. They were about this big and they were in a sleeve. And they had different colored standards for each group. And the whole stack was about that thick and it fit in your briefcase perfectly. So she pulled out and she comes to the ring. She said, here, I've got the correct standard. Oh, I can't look at that. It may have been doctored. Oh my God. So he says, hold on. And he sits down and he goes through his papers again. Now we're 15, 20 minutes, 2 dogs standing in the ring. We're going through all these mechanics. And he finally goes, you hear him, he goes, whoop, whoop, whoa. And he holds it up in the air and he says, I got it. I got the standard. And he comes over to me and he says, you were right. It is the standard. But you want to know something else? The other dog's best to breed today.
That's good.
And it was a great joke till the guy died. Whenever I'd see him, we'd joke about that. He took it very well. Some would get upset that you're questioning his studying of the standards. He took it very well, and he was really good about it. But that was my best. Know your standard. Know what's in your standard and be able to quote it properly.
Yeah.
Don't adjust it to how you want it to be. The standards are the standards. And then, go to your mentor and where do you weigh things? I like the old standards that gave numerical values to each part. Some standards still have it, but you get 10 points for the head and 2 points for the neck, and the top line's 5 points. I like those kinds of standards, but I would go to my mentor, or if it was showing for a breeder, I'd say, I don't get this. Like I said to Kitty Stidell, I'd gone second to Clint Livingston's Charmaine PBGV too many times. I was frustrated because what bothered me, and I'm not being critical of anybody's handling styles or whatever, but he ran that bitch off her feet. He just raced her down the line and her tail went straight out. And I'd watch her as she'd go into the corner, as she'd go at a slower pace, the tail came up. Now, these are trailing hounds, much like Bassets, carry the tail in a saber form, going around. That's how you follow them in the weeds, is through their tail. Bassets, Beagles, you follow them with their tail. And here's this tail sticking straight out. And I was showing for Kitty Stidell, who is the self-proclaimed mother of PBGVs in the States here, and which is fine. I'm not saying anything, but I said, I'm constantly being told to slow my dog down. These are trailing hounds, Bassets. Elaine Rigdon was the worst on me. She would scream at me. But so why don't you PBGV judges talk about speed and what the proper gait speed is rather than running them off their feet? She said, I never thought about that. I don't think they've ever done anything about it since then either, put into their education or what, but that bothered me. Here was a presentation, another handler was showing a foxhound in our area. And the foxhound standard, when you read it, says that there's not to be any I don't know if the word's discernible, but erectile power to the ears. And this person stood in front of the foxhound and baited it like a freaking Doberman. And the ears came up and it looked very showy. It parked itself four square and the tail up, da-da-da. But I'm thinking, no erectile power. What does that mean?
We all know what that means.
You don't bait them. Just like basset hounds, you really don't bait them because then they get these big elephant kind of ears that come up forward. Yep. And that takes away from the long wraparound ears and the velvet drapes and stuff. When you start, there were times I did bait my bass. I'd roll a piece of liver because that's what the son of a bitch wanted to see. Judges. They want, they bring you out to the middle of the ring. They show your dog. How do you show a basset hound? They don't stand. They don't stand square. They don't stand square with a good top line. Don't make me do that exercise, please.
It's very true. It's true.
Yeah. It would make me crazy.
Yeah, we don't have enough.
Because then, knowing the breed and knowing that you don't get a picture posing like that, and then you win the group, then you can hear people saying, well, how did that win the group? Look at the top line that thing had out in the middle of the ring. Well, they shouldn't have been asked to do that exercise to start with.
Yeah. We need more breed-specific presentation. I agree.
Yes. Yes. Just because you're doing it for several of the other breeds or whatever breeds you want to, the Elkhound or the Whippet or the Greyhounds, or, you want to see some expression. You don't want to see those kind of ears on basset hounds. You don't want to see that on foxhounds. But so study your standard and
be breed specific. I agree with that.
That's the most important thing.
Good points, Bryan. One last question, Bryan, then I'll let you go. If you could meet Bryan, the 20-year-old Bryan Martin, is there any advice you'd give him?
Well, when I was 20 years old, I had no intentions of being a dog handler at that time. I'd been through it up through my teens. Then I was in college. I lost the interest, met Nancy, got real interested in it. And for 30 years, I was then considered a handler. But my father owned a family business. He was an interior decorator, and he made custom-made drapes. And he would go to Williamsburg, Virginia, and take pictures of all the old homes and all the drapes in these old historic homes. And then he'd rebuild them and sell them to customers that he had. And he had high-end North Shore, Chicago, mega customers. And it was all custom-made stuff, all hand-sewn, all done on special machines, but they weren't what he hated what was referred to as ready-mades. And ready-mades are ones that you just go to Target and buy a set of drapes off the shelf. He was an artist. And he told me one day, he says, you're not going to take this business over. I've been unhappy most of my life because I had to take the family business over when my grandfather passed away, who I never even knew. He died 9 years before I was even born, but he had to come back and do the family business. And he says, "You're not going to do this." He says, "I don't care what you do, just be happy doing it. Enjoy your job." And so take that into consideration at 20 years old. Try to find something that you enjoy. I enjoyed working with the dogs. It didn't bother me that I was getting $1 an hour working with the dogs because I enjoyed it.
Yep, exactly.
You know, learning how to load a truck, how to feed dogs, how to trim dogs. It was all really and I enjoyed it. And so as a 20-year-old, it's hard to actually find something that you could really enjoy. If dogs are your game, make it your game. Don't get into it and say, "Oh, I hate this is, I hate doing this, I hate doing that." Find something else to do.
Exactly. I agree.
Nobody says you have to show dogs. It does say you got to pick up poop. That's one of the things about dogs. You got to pick it up. You have to.
Yeah.
But that's just an evil part of the business. You have to pick up poop. But other than that, nobody's twisting your arm to show dogs and stuff. So be happy in what you're doing. And I was happy doing the horse shows and doing all that stuff. I just was happier with my wife doing what she liked to do.
Sure.
And she was passionate about it. And we turned it into a great business for us. We did wonderful. I mean, my assistants, Larry Cornelius, worked for us almost 4 years. He was our very first assistant. Wow. Worked for us before he worked for Peter Green. I had Chris Jones worked for us with the Mastiffs and the Papillons. I had Aaron Hall worked for us. Labradors and Dobermans down in St. Louis. And I'm sure I'm forgetting others, but we had really good help, and we had fun with our help. They lived with us. I cooked for them. I provided their meals. I remember one time one of my assistants came to me and said, so-and-so's paying so-and-so this, and I think I need more money. I need to be paid what they're being paid. And I said, well, I'll cut you a deal here. I'm going to cut you a deal. I'm going to give you the world versus me. You find me a school, any kind of school that's going to pay you to earn a living, learn a trade that you're ultimately going to leave me and take 2 or 3 of my clients when you do leave me, and that's going to pay you. I'm the only trade that you're learning a business that I'm paying you. Yeah. No matter what it is, $1, $10, whatever it is an hour. But you're getting an education here. So I'm paying you to get an education. It should be the other way around. Exactly. You should be paying me to be here.
We're feeding them.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, somebody comes to learn a trade under me, they should pay me to learn that trade. And then they can go out on their own. I'm paying them.
Exactly. I never thought about that, Brian. True.
That's a great deal.
Yep.
And you're not going to find one place in the entire world well, you might find other animal businesses or whatever like ours, but basically you're not going to find anybody that does that.
Yep.
It pays you to learn a trade, to ultimately take business away from me.
Yeah. I never thought about
And
it.
it's happened. It's happened.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
But anyway, so I don't know. Does that answer?
No, that's good advice. Yeah, and that's good answer for your 20-year-old Bryan Martin. Yep, that was good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. And,
So are you going to be judging yourself? Are you coming back to show dogs, or do you know? Or
I'm still up in the air. I with this whole COVID nonsense, I came back and showed some dogs because they interfere with my seminar business because there was no travel anymore up here. But and the way things are going now, I'm leaning towards the judging again. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited about it. So we'll see. We'll see. I still like showing the dogs though. So
right. The first two shows I've judged here, frustrating is general presentation. You know, if they just pull it together better. And I had a lot of temperament problems.
yeah.
And then they'd say, oh, well, they're COVID puppies. Well, you know what? COVID puppies, you can still walk them up and down the driveway. You can have the neighbor come over, have the help come over, do something with them. They don't have to be like this.
Exactly.
That's your excuse. And I found that in my first two assignments here, that was the most difficult thing, is to have to tolerate that and zip my lip and not say anything. You know, like, yeah, you could have trained it. You know, you could have done things, but
yeah,
zip it, move on.
Hard sometimes.
It is.
All right, but well, tell Nance I'm gonna, or Nancy. I just called her Nance. Don't I'm gonna get Ernie. Cut that out. Tell Nancy I want her on that chair as well. So
yeah, she will. I'll tell her. You know, if next week works. We'll plan on it.
All right, excellent,
Good.
Brian. I appreciate it, and then give my love to Nancy, and I will talk to
you.
Hey, Brian. Hey. First inside joke. Thanks, Brian.
My pleasure. Good to chat.
Thanks, Brian. I told you it was a good interview. It was great to catch up. Can't wait to see you both soon. Anyway, if you like what you're seeing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. If you want to get a hold of me at dogshowtips@gmail.com. Or if you want to just find out what's happening in Will's world, go to willalexander.net. But don't forget about our podcast. We have the Wayne and Will podcast. Dog Show Drive comes out every Thursday on Stitcher, Apple, and Spotify. Till next time.